On behalf of Namita Gokhale, William Dalrymple, and all my colleagues at Teamwork Arts, welcome back to JLF's Brave New World Season 2. Our magazine partner for this series is The Week, Journalism with a Human Touch. Those of you who missed our earlier episode, The Fire Starters, Jan Carson in conversation with Jayanti Naju Seth, you can catch this on our YouTube channel, Jaipur Litfest JLF, or on our Facebook page, JLF Litfest. Our next session today is Serious Men. Sudhir Mishra in conversation with Vani Tripathi Tikoo. Award-winning author Manu Joseph's novel Serious Men has recently been adapted by Sudhir Mishra into a Netflix movie and stars the iconic Nawazuddin Siddiqui. It delves into the life of a man who unwittingly starts a chain of uncontrollable events as he attempts to promote the myth he has created around his son. Celebrated filmmaker Sudhir Mishra speaks about the many layers of the film and its piercing look at a divided and aspirational India. In a conversation with Vani Tripathi Tikoo, he also discusses the experience of bringing this narrative onto an OTT platform and explores the story's many satirical levels of class, love, ego, and ambition. Sudhir Mishra is an Indian film director and screenwriter known for directing critically acclaimed films including Hazaro Khwaishe Aisi, Dharavi, and Chameli. With a career spanning over 30 years, his work has been recognized by the world, of course, by the Government of India, and he's received 3 national awards from the President of India. Vani Tripathi Tikoo is the youngest ever member of the Central Board of Film Certification. Her campaigns and outreach programs have focused on encouraging women's participation in politics, as well as issues revolving around education, empowerment, and employment. All our sessions that have been broadcast till now are available on our Facebook page and on our YouTube channels. Please do remember to ask questions and comment by typing it into the comment section below. In case any of you drop off due to bandwidth issues, you can find us on our Facebook and YouTube channels. Ladies and gentlemen, Serious Men, director Sudhir Mishra in conversation with Vani Tripathi Tikoo. Over to you, Vani.
Welcome, friends, and I'm very, very happy that I have my friend, accomplished filmmaker, and somebody whose work I've followed for many years, decades, Sudhir Mishra, with me today. And we're going to talk about his new film, Serious Men, which is making a lot of noise, all in the right tone and tenor, and also a glorious filmography of more than 3 decades of Sudhir and what his opinion and his ideas regarding cinema are. Welcome, Sudhir. Congratulations.
Thank you.
What a gorgeous, gorgeous film you've made, and pertinent film, as I wrote recently, insignia of the times that you and I belong to. Also, very nuanced in his approach to look at the complexities of life around us, whether it's caste, whether it's societal concerns like how we treat our middle class, the aspirational part of the middle class, looking at the elite privilege that people have around us in this country. How does it feel? And tell us, how did you start this journey, this beautiful film that you made?
Well, I'd read Manu Joseph's brilliant novel many years ago, but then my writers on another project, Bhavesh, came to me and said they wanted to buy the rights if I would direct it. And then I read the novel again and I said yes, with some trepidation, because the better the novel, the more difficult the adaptation to films. It's mediums also find their subjects. It's difficult, to transform. Something is good for a poem, something good for a painting, something good for a novel. So film is something else. Film, you shoot action. Action means people moving. It's a concrete medium. You have to, the performances. You turn it into a play, in a sense. So it's a very different thing. But then we took it up. It took about 8 months, 8 to 10 months, to transform it from book to script. And we had to concoct a lot. You have to take suggestions from the novel. You have to take signals from it, ideas from it, characters from it, and then turn it and internalize it. Almost. And because as a director, writers, we can't sort of mimic anything. We can't mimic Manu Joseph's head. Because how do I say okay? How do I, okay a shot? How do I think of a shot? How do I think of a scene? How do I, I can't think with his head. So I have to, you have to forget the film owes a lot to the book. But, now it's a separate entity. And you have to see it like that, like something is based on real life or something is based on somebody, a biopic or anything, You have to see it like that, and then it becomes another entity. And I think we managed. We took out some aspects because the film also. A novel goes into his novel goes into many directions. Ian Money and the Sun is just one aspect of it. There is Acharya, the scientist, the politics of the Science Institute, his relationship with his wife, his relationship with his assistant, associate, junior, his assistant, his relationship with his colleagues. The Science Institute forms a very important part of the book. In the film, it comes in where it affects Ian Money's life and Ian Money and his son's life. So, that's what we chose to focus the film on, the father and son. And I think that was a wise choice. It works.
Very wise, very wise. When you look at Ayan Money and the Sun, when you look at the character of that Nawazuddin Siddiqui plays, and the boy, it's so effortless. And Sudhir, we all belong to the craft of cinema. It can't be that effortless if the director doesn't wish it to be so. If the actors who are playing those characters don't dovetail, it almost looks like they belong to each other. It almost looks like they are father and son. Tell us a little about this, because we very seldom talk about characterization. And when we talk about the craft of cinema, we always talk about how well the writing was, how good the editing is, how brilliant the cinematography was. But I think one of the most pivotal parts of your film, most of your cinema, I'm going to come to it later, is the effortlessness of people on screen and the comfort that they have with each other. How does this happen? As an actor myself, I would be so happy if I'm that effortless with a co-actor, and that too if the co-actor is a child. Tell us a little about that and what took the prep time, to achieve that in the film.
Well, a lot of people say this, and you have to create what is called a state of grace for in a sense, an atmosphere where people are free. The kid took a lot of doing. We tested a lot of kids with Mukesh Habra, about 50, more than 50 kids. And then it wasn't working in Bombay. So I told Mukesh, since it has a South Indian background, why don't you go to Chennai? So a lot of kids, a lot of auditions came from Chennai. And then we chose 2 or 3 kids, workshop with them for 15 days, and then chose this kid. And then we workshopped this kid for 2 months.
Wow.
Yeah, so and he's quite a worker. He's quite an actor, and he's a very bright boy who just doesn't tire. He's like reminds me of professional adult actors. In fact, you say, "Jao so jao, yaar, go sleep, do something, relax, don't come tomorrow." He gets really disappointed. If you shoot with somebody else, he gets disappointed and says, "Shoot with me." So he's quite a kid, and then Nawaz and he luckily got along. And the best thing about Nawaz is that he lets himself go. He's got this enormous skill set. His instinct is brilliant. he understands. He's really bright, Nawaz. He gets it really quickly. I mean, if you the essence of it, he gets really quickly, and then he lets it. Then he lets himself. He sort of surrenders himself to you, to the film, to the other actors, to the atmosphere, to the location, so he doesn't ever leave the location. You'll never find him in the van, you know. I tell my assistant, Nawaz ko bulao, bole, sir, main to yahi hu. So he kind of soaks in, you know, without it being very, so he stays within without making a fuss, he stays within the character, within the atmosphere, within it, and works like that. And it's my job then to create the context and the whatever and the rhythm of it and the graph of it. So he lets it go, you know, and he's very trusting when he believes in you. So I think we really got along, and so did him and all the other actors and the kid and him, and I really got along very well with the kid. So I mean, became quite a lot of fun actually. The shooting
and the fun is very visible. I mean, you're all having fun in the sense that it's a serious film. The binaries of so many complex things, politics of our time, caste, you know, the way we treat our children, the way the education system mars their intelligence. But since we are at JLF, one question is very obvious. This is a book acquisition, Sudhir, and after a long time, we've seen a very beautiful, I would not say it's an adaptation, it's probably an interpretation of a book which has been in public space for some time, Manu Joseph, Serious Men. There was a time in various conversations that you and I have had over the years, we used to say Sarat Chand Chattopadhyay, we used to say Prem Chand, we used to talk about writers and cinema of the time used to reflect the ideas of the literature of its time. But it doesn't happen so anymore. But yet, this is a book acquisition, and after a long time, we've seen a book turning into a film. Tell us this marriage of literature and cinema, how pivotal it is to the time that we are talking, about right now, and how pivotal it is to you as a filmmaker. Because I know you're also a man of letters, a man of literature, coming from the glorious family that you do, and I often get to hear about literature being the centerpiece of your thought process so many times. So tell us, what is this amalgamation or this collaboration of literature and cinema in times like ours today?
I respect literature, novels. I grew up in a place called Sagar in a small town, and we were the children of professors, and so we had the run of the university. So we also had the run of the library. So in many summers and many times, you know, I spent a lot of time in the literature section of the library, and I, you know, in a sense, if you live in a very small town, you live in an imaginary world. You can't live. There's nothing that you can do very much there. So I lived in my own head, you know, in the world of books and literature, and I think I'm a failed novelist. You know, I mean, I can't handle the terror. The terror of the solitariness of being a novelist. But, you know, I think initially people who have influenced my head are the novelists. A lot of novelists, Indian, English, European, American, a lot of them. And so, I mean, I don't think I'm, as in, let's say, if you take America, then I'm more influenced by, say, Saul Bellow or John Updike or Gore Vidal or Norman Mailer or James Jones than Martin Scorsese and Francis Ford. In the head, let's say, or I'm as influenced by Sarat Chand Chattopadhyay, Vani Tripathi Tikoo, as much as Satyajit Ray or Guru Dutt, the initial days we spent reading, right? So, I mean, they kind of triggered our head, created an imaginary, or they were concrete real worlds for us. So I mean, I'm always very skeptical of I've never read books in order to make them into films. I respect it too much, and I think it's an abstract medium and everybody. For example, a book like 100 Years of Solitude, or Nobody Writes to the Colonel, or Aunt Julia and the Scriptwriter, or so many great books. Here, as well. To transform it into a film is a from that abstraction, that it concretizes too much. Everybody has their own character, imagination of the characters in a book.
Right.
In a sense, writes their own book, right?
Hmm.
In a sense, it's a more dynamic interaction between reader and the reader is a much more active person, right? He sits up and reads, and his brain is, unless it's triggered, you're actively participating. Yeah, cinema can be, especially bad cinema, can be very a passive experience. It's a passive, dumbed down experience. In fact, I think cinema is responsible for a lot of flaws in the world. It's a dumbed down, idiotic medium at times. Because and then it jumps into all the bad formulas of bad novels and whatever, and creates a very stupid notion of the world, which gives people very fake ideas. Like you'll all hold hands and walk happily into the sunset. That life is not grey. That it's not, that love.
The happily ever after.
That is not difficult. That we are not heroic all the time. That we are not living in the best of possible worlds, but we all have to manage. It's a difficult life, which cinema kind of simplifies, right?
Right.
So people are always looking for heroes, which they don't find in reality. And I think that's it's a very dumbing down, can be very passive, and especially with the new technology where sound, is thrown at you, and sometimes even the theater seat is vibrating, and it becomes like a very visceral experience. But at its best, cinema is perhaps the greatest medium. At its best, in the hands of because you from the concrete you can go into the internal. It can remain a mystery. So you try and Iron Money, is he grey? Of course he is, but is he heroic? Is he not? What is he thinking? It's a little bit of the mystery of everything is not sure, but you don't find out. Like in life, you can't enter into another person's head. You try and create that little ambiguity in him, which Nawaz captures beautifully. And I think it's very interesting if you can do that in terms of leave something to the imagination, not answer all questions.
Which is also the end of the film, Sudhir. It's so beautiful. You've left so much unsaid. You've said so much in the film through Iron Money, through also the elitism of the scientist, who finally, probably also finds something else in life, through this episode that occurs around him. Also of the child and the mother who lives the lie of a spouse, and how, dejected and crestfallen she is when she finds out that, all this was such a grave lie.
Very disappointed.
Very disappointed.
Having played,
but yet,
very beautiful and very soft and very heroic. Everybody is a hero in their own ways. Everybody has strength in their own ways. Everybody has their own situations. There are people placed in different, and the art job is not to be judgmental, but to see them all. And so on. And so, in the sense that in their spaces, they are their own. They are the leading men in their own, or women in their own lives. So, whoever even the smallest character, when they come on screen, that is, you have to give them that respect. You can't. It's very easy in cinema to take somebody, like make somebody heroic and to
yes,
knock down somebody else. Take a great freedom fighter, and it's very difficult to take one person of the freedom movement, let's say, and take another person. It's very easy to inflate one's qualities and deflate another's, and then I'm deliberately not taking names because these days it's,
Yeah.
so I mean, I'm just saying that it's very easy. That's a very simple way of hero villain turn somebody into a, but if it's more difficult if you are if you are caught in that realm of, grays and somebody being right sometime, somebody not being right sometime, and life, taking over, and it's a much more interesting thing which audiences have been so taken away from, and that they are not allowed, they have not been trained to see films in that way. They are not been allowed to see films in that way. So they've got used to seeing cinema in a certain way. They've got used to seeing rhythm in a certain way. So a lot of people will say, for example, if a film has, जिसको हिंदुस्तानी में ठहराव कहते हैं, if the film has some, repose,
The staying quality, the staying
they
power.
say editing बुरी है. Everybody has editing is the most misunderstood idea of cinema. Everybody has every stupid uncle and aunt have an idea about, including mine, have ideas about editing. So, it's a big problem,
So I want to delve deeper into the mind of Sudhir Mishra and these more than 3 decades of filmography behind you. But it's apt we are talking about serious men. So Manu Joseph is doing a reading, especially for this session, and let's hear what Manu has to say.
He wondered if there's a way he could tell his wife how absurd were the occupations of these men and women who so easily frightened her. An old man wanted to search the atmosphere for microbes that were coming down from space. A young woman will soon study 2 bottles of air. This is what people did. This was their job. In the real world that lay outside the institute, it was even more weird. Majestic men went in cars in the isolation of the backseat, studying laptops on their way to work, where they will think of ways to fool people into buying cola, or a type of insurance, or a condom that had dots on it, or invest other people's money in the stock market. Some wrote for the papers about how more and more women were interested in cricket, or why Afghanistan was important to Pakistan, or some shit like that. And some people rewrote what other people wrote. Some drew, some made faces in front of a camera. This was more or less what big people did. The beneficiaries of the millenniums are at the end of the tunnel of time. This is what they did. He could have done any of those jobs, Oja too, and they could have lived in a building that had a lift, and when they entered the kind of restaurants where emaciated men parked the cars of fat men, they would not be so frightened by the calm of the cold air inside and the smell of the mild spices and the difficult names of fish. It was so easy to be the big people. All you had to do was to be born in the homes where they were born. That evening, as he went in the Institute's shuttle bus to the Churchgate station, he gawked at the moronic city that was in the hysteria of going home, as though everyone here was going home for the first time. In the twilight, that was now the color of dust. In the fury of horns, that was a national language because honking had telegraphic properties. Cars stood stranded all around the bus like ants carrying the corpse of a caterpillar, where a bumper ended and another began. In those crevices, people crossed the road and motorbikes wobbled through, honking. There was a caste system even on the road. The cars, their faces frowning in a superior way through the bonnet grills, were the Brahmins. They were higher than the motorcycles, were higher than the pedestrians. The cycles were the lowest of the low. Even the pedestrians pretended that they didn't see them. The bus had to be something in the structure, and Iron decided it was him, lowly but formidable and beyond torment. In any given situation in this country, Iron thought with a chuckle that did not suffice. Someone was the Brahmin and someone was the untouchable. As the bus inched through the evening life, the traffic grew. There was no space on the road anymore. A man on the bike was riding on the pavement. When he tried to plunge into the road, a car hit him. He fell down but managed to get up. He looked shocked. That iron loved. After riding like a moron all over the place, observe the face of an Indian when he crashes. He is stunned. This country had become a circus, and that was fair. What Iron's forefathers were once to the Brahmins were today to the world. He looked without emotion at the tall, unattainable apartment blocks that seemed to rise suddenly. In the pathetic clarity of hope that he once had in his early youth, he used to tell himself that a day will come when he will live in one of those buildings, that he too will get home in a lift. He knew those homes very well. He knew those lives. After all, he was once a door-to-door salesman for Eureka Forbes vacuum cleaners. He saw women group together and meditate and even chant, "I am beautiful." Men who were nothing without their inheritances dedicated to themselves a song called "My Way." And he figured, through the many pieces of conversation he overheard in those homes, that there were 4 Beatles and that you had to clap at the incipient guitar piece of Hotel California. He also saw men scoop the shit of their babies, and once he even saw a man in an apron take the dishes from the dining table to the kitchen sink. They were the new men.
Shut the door, you moron.
मॉरॉन, इम्बेसिल, नॉबहेड, ये लोग हमें इन्हीं नामों से बुलाते थे. हमने भी रिटर्न में उनका नाम रख दिया, सीरियस मैन.
रात काला छाता जिस पर इतने सारे छेद, तेजाब उड़ेला किसने इस पर जान न पाए भेद. तारा रा रा रा, तारा रा रा रा, रा 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 रा. रात काला छाता जिस पर इतने सारे छेद, तेजाब उड़ेला किसने इस पर जान न पाए भेद. तारा रा रा रा, तारा रा रा रा, रा 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 रा.
So, Sudhir, from the time you started work as an assistant, Kundan Shah, Vidhu Vinod Chopra, long filmography, Ye Wo Manzil To Nahi being your first film, but some of the films you've made have been path-breaking. I know you're a very modest man, since I know you since decades. Hazaro Khwaishein Aisi, I cannot not talk about Hazaro Khwaishein Aisi today, because we are increasingly seeing comments of all kinds happening around us. Societal comment, binaries of the politics, the economy, and the socio-political thought processes in our time. But when you made Hazaro, it was not just a film which was about or around the emergency. It was not just about people who were rebels. It was about the growth of a nation. It was also about the progress of a society, which from a telescopic or a cinematic point of view got told in a very expansive way. Tell us about Hazaro, and of course I want to talk about Chameli, which is another film which stands out. I mean, most of your films stand out for the narrative and the context and the content that they have. But Hazaro remains a path-breaking film, you know, in the times that it was made many years ago and so pertinent even today. Why?
I don't know. I mean, it's sometimes there are actually, every filmmaker, 3-4 has 3-4 films in him, which only he can make or she can make, right? And you should only attempt to actually make those other films. But the problem is we don't know what those 3-4 films are, so we make the other 20 in order to make those 3. Right? Everybody will be known. Gurudutt is known by 4 films, 5 films. Everybody in the end. There are geniuses, Kurosawa, there are people like that, Ray, I'm not a genius. So, I mean, those people may be known by 10 films, 12 films, right? Those are the films only they could have made. What is a great, the Persian said, what is a great story? That which combines that which you have seen and heard with what has happened to you.
Wow.
Right? So, until you don't bring in what is original, your own, what you bring into the story, with what has happened, how do you react to the world that, what you have seen and heard, So, I mean, and there is this mystery of the subconscious, which none of us know, but we know that the creative process somewhere triggers it. We don't know how, So, Hazaro is a film that I was perhaps born to make, right? I mean, because of my background, because of the fact that I have a Nehruvian father, I had a scientist father, that I'm from Lucknow, originally, but then I've gone and lived in places like Bundelkhand and Sagar, and I didn't go to villages in order to do research, but when I hit a cricket ball, went to village. My classmates were villagers. I went to their house when funerals and deaths and births, right? So, I mean, I know a village from inside, right? And I also know, I mean, it's a fascinating upbringing where, you have the best mind, some of the best minds of any subject as your uncles in a university, because that was a campus. Actually, I'm a campus boy. I grew up in a university campus. I don't think I'm strictly from Sagar or anywhere. I'm from a campus, right? So where there are hostel students and Nigerian students and Arab students and, all sorts of people, and some Englishmen who come as, visiting professors, and Maharashtrians, South Indians, Punjabis, Jatars, Ranades, Mallikarjunans. I've grown up like that in a campus so I don't know. I guess I had an instinct for that film, and nobody, not one critic, ever asked why is a film about the emergency called Hazaro Fighters? Where does Ghalib come into the emergency? So Ghalib is the perspective through which I see life a lot. He's in my head, right? So I mean, at the end of it, the irony is Ghalib's, that they sit together. You don't know whether it is sad or. I mean, what is Hazaro about? It is about the vestiges of beauty that are left when youth fades. What do you hold on to? Which is why, I mean, because we managed to make a film like that, it lasts. If we had just made a film about the emergency, about a problem type of film, it won't last, right? I mean, the problem goes away, the film disappears, right? But it's about youth, and it's also about fathers and sons. It's about what we hand over to our children, and the children not accepting what has been handed over. So there is a dissonance between children and fathers and parents and children, So it's about a lot of their things in that.
But interestingly, Sudhir, Dharavi is about the fantabulous world, the dream world of a taxi driver in Dharavi, brilliantly played by Om Puri. His Raat Ki Subah Nahi is a thriller. So look at the genres you've delved in. Chameli is about this woman that Kareena Kapoor plays, who's a lady of the night, and what happens through that one night. And Khoya Khoya Chand is a noir film. It's absolutely a noir film. I mean, when I remember seeing Khoya Khoya Chand, the first thing that struck me was about how we lost a time. And cinematically also we lost that time. I mean, one of my favorite films is Khoya Khoya Chand that you made.
Actually, I'm very disappointed that people don't get Khoya Khoya Chand.
Yeah.
Because Khoya Khoya Chand is not about the background. Khoya Khoya Chand is the 60s.
Yes, absolutely.
So it is about the 60s, the social structure of the 60s, where people were stratified into roles. So there was a hero, there was a villain, there was a vamp, there was a friend. That was the structure of a Hindi film.
Absolutely.
So I expected the critics to get this, that I took the structure of a Hindi film and dismantled it. So the hero was not heroic. The vamp had ambition and passion. The heroine was not pure. The villain had forgiveness. The friend wanted the heroine. He was not relegated to he was not Rajinder Nath relegated to, the friend, hero's friend. So it was about trying to break away. The 60s were trying to, that film was trying to, everybody trying to break away in a sense from roles assigned to them.
You were emancipating the obvious,
So,
all the time.
I mean, in the sense, in the end of the film is an orgasm. She has an orgasm and dies. Right? I mean, that was liberation.
Yes.
Right, in a sense. So nobody talked about that. Everybody said, oh, Soha Ali Khan is not like Meena Kumari. When was she expected to be like Meena Kumari?
Yeah.
Making a film on Meena Kumari. But
So,
I don't know Meena Kumari so well. I can't dare to, jump into her mind and pretend that I know her, or that I know Madhubala, or that I pass judgments about them. Why
but
should
a
I
lot
pass
of
judgments
times,
about people I don't know?
but a lot of
Okay,
times,
LFI as
Sudhir,
a
this.
filmmaker can absolutely be right.
But a lot of time, this
Filmmaker,
is said
being a
about
filmmaker,
you.
right.
No, I mean, people not getting one kind of cinema, I understand, but a lot of time this is said about you. Even when you made Hazaro, nobody expected a film like Hazaro to come, right? Even Israt Ki Subhani was probably one of the most, I mean, it wasn't dark, yet it was so dense and it was so deep and it was a thriller and it had great music. So a lot of times I've heard, oh, Sudhir Mishra is so ahead of his times. Is it a way of saying that the complexity of characterization that you do in your films, that narrative, I mean, Serious Menace is also not a simple film. It's a complexly layered film about what happens to people around us in the very context that we are speaking of today. Does it happen to you that you feel if I would have made Khoya Khoya Chand now, maybe they would have gotten it much more? Or you don't bother about the fact, okay, they didn't get it then, it's fine.
But
They'll probably get it now.
I can't decide that, and I can't be pompous enough to believe that I'm ahead of my times. And but people don't like certain things. For instance, when I made Dharavi, actually there's a big connection between Serious Men and Dharavi. If you see, Rajkaran Yadav, the taxi driver, Mayan Money, right? Almost this grey.
The aspirational middle class man, yeah.
So at that time, people don't want the poor to be aspirational.
Yes.
So I mean, the 90s got a lot of criticism from so-called social workers who said, "अरे ये तो यार business में करना चाहता है, इसको तो मतलब सिर्फ दान मांगना चाहिए और हाथ उठाना चाहिए और लात खाना चाहिए और मर जाना चाहिए बुरी आर्ट फिल्म की तरह." तो वो that poor man had agency.
Yeah, he had agency.
That the poor laugh, that the poor have their own ambition, that the rich or the upper class are not willing because they've never met the poor. They sit in their drawing room
and he fantasizes about Madhuri Dixit. I mean, how fantabulous is that?
So that culture, the film begins with people don't get all this. Everything has to be concretized. The film begins with a Ektara and, a folk guy sitting on top of a hill alone, playing it. That music transforms to his music, his culture, his mind has been taken over by Hindi film in the urban context, right? So it is as much about, so in a sense, that ambition is being also triggered by Hindi film. So it is both in a sense good and bad. In a sense, it's a complicated relationship with the medium, and with the heroine, but Madhuri also inspires him in a sense.
She does, absolutely.
She's in a sense an inspiration, so I mean, it's not merely a criticism, but even Ayan Money wants a leg up. He has agency, he sees the fraud, he sees through the fraud of his superiors. What does he want? He knows that, everybody needs a little, he knows merit is not everything, because merit is a relative thing. And for his son to get into that situation, it will take 3-4 generations before they can run an even race, So, he's I mean, grey and interesting and ambitious and, also self-aware at most times. And many people don't like these kind of heroes, Manu
Well,
Joseph, Manu Joseph
obviously,
actually called me, Manu Joseph called me, he wrote an article about me after Das Day, which he said that I'm the collector of frail men.
that's a good one. Coming to the ahead of its time kind of scenario, we are talking to each other virtually, Sudhir, in the most dystopian times that we've ever seen. But there's a tectonic shift which has occurred in the past 7 months of this COVID, which is that OTT platforms have become the new normal for content consumption in a country like India. I mean, for the glitz and the glamour and the extravaganza of watching a film at the 35 space, suddenly content is in our palm. And you're one of the filmmakers who's also from the generation which knew the spool and then edited on the spool and then saw the chip and is now just made a film for the OTT. What is this journey like? And is it still true that there's a whole generational shift which still needs to occur for filmmakers to understand the new normal and become accustomed to telling stories the way you've made Serious Man right now?
No, I mean, I think all sorts of things will coexist. And, like theatre still exists.
Yes.
Right? I mean, they said film will come, theatre will disappear, but in its own niche and its own way. You go to London, don't get a theatre ticket. I mean, you can get a cinema ticket, you can't get a theatre ticket. So in many places, everything will have to be of a very high standard in order to survive skilled at an experiential level. It has to be worth it, right? That theatre has to give an experience which only theatre can give. So similarly, cinema, it's irreplaceable going into a theatre, a dark hall, and sitting with a community and watching a film, in that large screen with that nuance of sound and picture and everything. And with a filmmaker controlling it more or less, though, even the projectionist controls it, but as much as possible, an artist controlling something. So that kind of thing will also occur, and so as technology grows, there is another. This OTT is a great platform for me. It's gonna, in a sense, given me another lease of life. I love the fact it brings back the novel in my head, right? Because the long form can go into various strands. Right, cinema is more or less because of scripting classes has become too simplistic. You can only make a film about this and that, no side characters. Oh, array, you have not completed that story. Oh, what has happened to this? Oh, you're distracting me by it. Why don't you take out this character? So today you can't write Godfather. Because there's so many characters whom I've not read the novel, there's so many characters that I only get a glimpse of. They only give suggestions to me. So I have to be able to take suggestions and not want the explanation for everything. But today we want explanations for everything, right?
Yeah.
But I think it's this long form gives you a great opportunity to delve into various aspects of something. You take something like Breaking Bad, you take something like Better Call Saul, you take The Wire, you take so many of these TV, now OTT, call it long form cinema, call it what you want. But, it gives you so many ways to explore things, to delve deep. And, the good thing about today is you can do anything you want.
Right.
You wanted to make a short film, do a short film. Because it's only is a 20-minute idea. You want to do a feature, you do a feature. You want to do a long mini-series, do a mini-series. You have something that goes over seasons and explores. Like The Wire is an idealized subject where it goes into various. It delves into crime and drugs and street and racial inequalities and many things from so many perspectives. So it takes you down so many roads. You could see that world from so many things. So, I mean, I think it's very interesting time, you know, and I think these OTT platforms are wonderful things to happen, you know. And also, this is a new experience. A young man now sees something on a laptop like this with a headphone, right? He's watching, sound is great and the picture is right here. It's another kind of experience which I'm not that used to. I still see transported on a 100-inch something projector and good sound and watch it because that's what I like. I like to respect the filmmakers' work on sound and other things, music.
Sudhir, talking of music, and obviously you spoke of theatre, the title track of Serious Men was something which was a journey down memory lane for me. That was a play done many moons ago by NSDNs, including Nawazuddin Siddiqui and Swanand Kirkire. Swanand sang it for you. The play was called Bade Mein Khele Chote Khel, which was an adaptation of Archangels Don't Play Pinballs. I'm going to hum that one line because it's playing in my head every single day since I've seen the film, because it belongs to my youth. I was in school and I used to work with Barry John those years when I saw the play. But do tell us how you thought of this and how it became the title track of the film before I end the conversation. Raat kala chhata isme kitne sare chek, kisne hai tezab udela, kaun bataye bhed, tarararara, 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 tarararara. So tell us how you got this track, and this was a theatre production forgotten long ago and you brought it back to life.
In 95, 94, when this post-Bandit Queen, when a batch of Delhi theatre guys, including Saurabh Shukla, came into my life, you know, around Israt Ki Subah Nahi, they were all acting. And
Nirmal Pandey.
Many, Nirmal, and in many drunken nights, the night ended with the NSD and theatre boys singing theatre songs. So this was something that Saurabh used to sing. So I remembered it from 95. So it's been how many, 25 years. So when I thought of this film and I was thinking of this one song that, you know, first I was thinking of some nonsense song which he likes, you know. And then suddenly this came and stuck in my head. So I found out about it and I asked Saurabh to sing it, and Saurabh remembered it and he sang it. Then he called his director, Avtar, who sang the second verse because he only remembered the first verse. And then Saurabh sang both verses, and then I sent it to Swanand, who remembered it in a vague way and sang it because it was sang it, you know, roughly. Then I sent what he sang to the music director, arranger, Saikya. And so then he arranged it, and then Swanand sang it again. So I think it kind of, you know, worked.
Beautiful.
But sometimes, you know, just a song that you have heard, you know, it's not particular, you've not got it written for the film, you know. It's not trying to explain anything. It's just a mood and a feeling and something inexplainable. That works better than something concretely for the. And so I think it works. You know, beginning and you know, it's, you know.
So Sudhir, Jiddu Krishnamurti famously said, "The observer is observed." So keep observing. Keep making these gorgeous films that you do. They speak about us, our lives, our times, people we forget, and people we should remember. More power to you. And thank you so much for being a part of the JLF Brave New World with us today. And many, many, many more films to you.
Yeah, thank you. Those who haven't seen Serious Men, please see it.
They will, I'm sure. Thank you, Sudhir.
Sudhir, thank you, Vani. Thank you, Manu. That was an absolutely brilliant session. And for those of you who haven't seen the series, please do log on and see Serious Men, which is on Netflix. Thank you, Manu, for joining us with that very short reading. That was absolutely delightful. For all our audiences, thank you. And please do remember to log back on Friday, the 30th of October, to watch another set of great sessions on JLF's Brave New World. We begin with a portrait of an artist, Paresh Maiti and Ina Puri in conversation with Kishore Singh, a compelling visual chronicle of one of India's most celebrated contemporary artists. A portrait of the artist in the world introduces us to the inner world and workings of Paresh Maiti. This will be at 7 p.m. IST, 1:30 p.m. GMT, and 9:30 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time, followed by The Tribulations of Trial by Media. Sensational and often toxic coverage by electronic and print media interferes with the due process and judicial inquiry. Accused and victim alike suffer assaults upon their rights to privacy and a fair trial. Reputed journalists and media persons discuss the cause of this criminal responsibility, the ethical and legal framework required to contain this dangerous and despicable trend. This is at 8:30 p.m. Indian Standard Time, 3 p.m. Greenwich Median Time, and 11 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time. And a reminder that starting 8th November, we begin with our JLF North America Festival Series, with JLF Colorado 8th to the 11th and 15th to the 18th of November, followed by JLF Houston from the 21st to the 22nd of November, JLF New York on the 23rd and 24th of November, and of course we conclude with JLF Toronto 27th to the 29th of November. Please do remember to block your dates and check your details on www.jlflitfest.org. And for those of you who are watching us on YouTube and wish to support Teamwork Arts and continuing our many projects, please do support us by buying the YouTube stickers. It really will go a long way in helping out. Thank you all. See you at 8:30 p.m.